Have you ever wondered why? Out of millions of people walking this earth, why does God pick just a handful for something extraordinary? If you're watching this right now, let me tell you, it's no accident. Something, or maybe someone, brought you here. This isn't a video for everyone. No, it's for those who felt it. A quiet whisper, a tug deep inside, a purpose you can't quite name. Are you one of them? I'm about to reveal 9 divine secrets about how God chooses the chosen ones. Truths you've never heard before. Truths that might just flip everything you thought you knew about yourself upside down. You see, God doesn't play by our rules, and what He's looking for might surprise you. But here's the deal. Don't leave. This message is too big, too life-changing to miss. It's for you. Yes, you. The one who's felt different, set apart, even when you didn't understand why. Stick with me, because what's coming next could light a fire in your soul you didn't even know was there. Ready? Let's go. So, you're here. And if you're still with me, I'm guessing you felt it too. That nagging question, why me? Why do some people get called to something bigger while others just coast through life? The Bible says it plain and simple in Matthew 22:14. Many are called, but few are chosen. But what does that even mean? What's the difference between the called and the chosen? That's what we're digging into today, and trust me, it's not what you think. Maybe you've always felt a little out of place, like there's this weight on your shoulders, a purpose you can't shake, even when the world tells you you're just another face in the crowd. Sound familiar? Think about the people we see in The Chosen. You know, that show that's got everyone talking. Peter, a rough around-the-edges fisherman. Matthew, a tax collector nobody liked. Mary Magdalene, a woman haunted by her past. They weren't perfect. They weren't powerful. So why them? Why not the priests or the kings? That's the mystery we're unraveling. 7 divine secrets that show how God picks His team. And here's the kicker. These aren't just old stories. They're clues about you. About why you're here, watching this, right now. I'm not here to give you some boring lecture. No way. These 7 secrets, they're like keys. Keys to unlock why you feel the way you do. Why your life hasn't been easy. Why you've always known there's more. If you've ever wondered if God's got a plan for you, this is your moment. Don't scroll away. Not yet. Because what's coming up isn't just information, it's a revelation. A revelation that could make you see your struggles, your dreams, even your doubts, in a whole new light. So, are you ready to find out how God chooses the chosen ones? Let's start with the first secret. Something so simple, yet so mind-blowing, it'll change how you see everything. Here it is. God doesn't care about what the world sees. He's not checking your resume, your bank account, or how many likes you get on Instagram. No, He's looking at something deeper. Your heart. That's right, the Bible drops this bombshell in 1 Samuel 16:7. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Sounds simple, right? But hold on, because this changes everything. Think about it. The world's obsessed with what's on the surface, your job, your looks, your status. But God? He's peering past all that noise, straight into who you really are. Take David, for example. When God sent Samuel to pick the next king of Israel, everyone thought it'd be one of David's older, tougher brothers. Guys who looked the part, but God said, nope. He picked David, a scrawny shepherd kid, barely old enough to shave. Why? Because David's heart was raw, real, and full of love for God, even if he messed up later. Now, let's bring it closer to home, the chosen. You've seen Peter, right? That loud, impulsive fisherman who's always putting his foot in his mouth. He's not exactly the guy you'd pick to lead a movement. He's rough, unpolished, the kind of dude who'd probably get canceled on Twitter today. But Jesus didn't see a screw-up. He saw a heart ready to fight, to love, to follow. Even when it was messy, that scene where Peter drops his nets and just goes, that's not about skills, it's about heart. So here's where it gets personal. Ever feel like you're not enough? Like you don't have the right credentials, the perfect past, or the confidence to be chosen? I've been there. Maybe you've got scars, mistakes you can't undo, failures you can't forget. But what if God's not counting those against you? What if He's looking at that quiet part of you, the part that still hopes, still prays, still wants to matter? Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt something stir inside you? A longing you can't explain? A pull towards something bigger? That's not random. That's your heart talking, and guess what? God's listening. He's not waiting for you to look perfect on the outside. He's watching what's happening on the inside, your dreams, your struggles, even your doubts. But here's the wild part. A good heart isn't just about being nice, it's about being real. David wasn't perfect. He messed up big time. Peter, he denied Jesus 3 times, yet God still chose them. Why? Because their hearts weren't fake. They were honest, broken, and open to Him. So look at yourself for a second. You don't have to have it all together. Maybe you're a mess right now, overwhelmed, unsure, wondering why life's so hard. But what's in your heart? Do you care? Do you want to do good, even when you stumble? That's what God's after. Not the shiny mask you show the world, but the real you underneath. And here's the thing. This is just the beginning. If God chooses based on the heart, what does that mean for the rest of us? Does He pick the weak ones, the broken ones, on purpose? That's where this gets even crazier. Stick with me, because the next secret's going to blow your mind. What if your flaws aren't a mistake, but the very reason God's got His eye on you? So we just uncovered something huge. God doesn't care about the outside. He's all about the heart. But if you thought that was surprising, wait till you hear this next secret. It's not just that God looks deeper, He actually picks the people we'd least expect. Secret number 2, God chooses the weak to do great things. Yeah, I know, it sounds backwards, but the Bible backs it up in 1 Corinthians 1:27. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. Think about that for a second. He's not hunting for the powerful or the perfect. He's looking for the ones who feel small, the ones who stumble, the ones like you and me. Take Moses, for instance. We left off talking about hearts, right? Well, Moses didn't just have a heart, he had a huge weakness too. When God calls him to free Israel, he's a stuttering shepherd hiding out in the desert, terrified to speak. He literally says, "God, I can't do this. I'm not good enough." But God doesn't flinch. He picks Moses anyway, and that weak voice ends up splitting the Red Sea. Crazy, right? Now, let's swing over to the chosen. You remember Matthew, the tax collector from secret number 1? His heart was a mess, lonely, rejected, but he's weak too. He's not bold or brave. He's the guy nobody wants around. Yet Jesus walks straight to his booth and says, "You're with me." That moment when Matthew drops his pen and follows, it's not about strength. It's about God seeing something in his weakness that we don't. Here's where it gets real for us. Ever feel like you're not strong enough? Like life keeps knocking you down and you're thinking, why me? I can't handle this. Maybe you've bombed at something big, a job, a dream, a relationship, and you're sitting there feeling useless. I've been there, staring at my own failures, wondering what's the point? But what if that's not a dead end? What if that's exactly where God steps in? The world's all about strength. Hustle harder. Be unbreakable. But God's playing a different game. He's saying, I don't need your power. I've got that covered. Give me your weakness and watch what I do. It's like he's picking the cracked cups, the shaky knees, the tired souls, and going, these are my people. Look at Peter again. We talked about his heart last time. Rough, real, ready to follow. But he's weak too. In the chosen, he's always tripping over himself, doubting, sinking in the water, scared out of his mind. And Jesus still grabs his hand, saying, why'd you doubt? That's not a slap on the wrist, that's a lifeline. God chooses the weak to show off his strength, to prove it's not about us, it's about him. So what's your weak spot? Fear, failure, feeling like you're never enough? Don't brush it off. That could be the very thing God's eyeing, thinking, this is my chance to shine. When you're at your lowest and he lifts you up, Everyone sees it's not your win, it's his. Now here's where it gets interesting. If God's picking the weak because of their hearts, does that mean he's after something else too? Something that doesn't need strength at all? Let's find out what's next, because this is only getting deeper. We've seen God's not chasing the perfect or the strong, he's after the heart, and he picks the weak to do big things. But here's where it takes another turn. Secret number 3, God doesn't care how good you are at stuff. He's not looking for skills or talent, he's looking for willingness. That's it. Just a simple yes. The Bible gives us a glimpse of this in Isaiah 6:8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send?" And I said, "Here I am, send me." No fancy qualifications, just a guy ready to step up. Let's unpack that. Think about the disciples, Jesus' crew. These weren't scholars or big shots. They were fishermen, tax collectors, regular Joes who didn't have a clue what they were signing up for. Peter, who we just talked about, weak, stumbling Peter, he didn't have a degree in preaching. He barely knew how to keep his boat afloat some days. But when Jesus said, "Follow me," Peter said yes. No resume, no plan, just a willing heart. And that's all it took. Now swing over to the chosen. Mary Magdalene, she's a perfect example. Before Jesus, her life was a wreck, haunted, broken, the kind of person nobody thought could amount to anything. But when he sets her free, she doesn't sit there figuring out if she's qualified. She just follows. That scene where she's standing there, tears in her eyes, ready to serve, it's not about ability, it's about her saying, "I'm in." Here's where it gets real for you and me. How many times have you held back because you didn't feel ready? I know I have. You think, "I'm not smart enough, not brave enough, not holy enough." Maybe you've got a dream, a quiet nudge to do something, but you're stuck telling yourself, "I don't have what it takes." Sound familiar? But what if God's not asking for that? What if he's just waiting for you to say, "Okay, I'll try"? The world's obsessed with ability. Get the degree, nail the interview, prove you're the best. But God? He's not running a talent show. He's looking for the ones who'll raise their hand, even if it's shaking. Moses from last time, he stuttered, but he said yes. David, a kid with a sling, said yes. Mary, with nothing to offer but her broken self, said yes. And God turned their willingness into miracles. Let's get personal. What's holding you back right now? Is it fear of failing? Thinking you're not cut out for something bigger? I've been there, staring at chances I didn't take because I didn't feel good enough. But here's the truth. God's not grading your skills. He's checking your heart. Are you willing? That's the spark he's after. Look at it this way. When Peter steps out of the boat to walk on water, he's not a pro swimmer. He's just willing to trust Jesus, even if he sinks 5 seconds later. And Jesus doesn't let him drown. He grabs him. That's the deal. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to start. God's got the rest covered. So ask yourself, is there something you've been dodging? A call you've ignored because you don't feel ready? Maybe it's praying more, helping someone, chasing a dream you buried. You don't need to have it all figured out. God's not waiting for you to be an expert. He's waiting for your yes. And when you give it, he'll blow your mind with what he can do through you. Now here's the thing. We've got the heart, the weakness, the willingness. But what happens when you say yes? Does it get easy? Not quite. The next secret's going to shake things up even more, because God's got a funny way of testing the ones he chooses. All right, we're on a roll. We've got the heart, the weakness, and that willingness to say yes, like we just saw with Peter and Mary. But here's where it gets gritty. Secret number 4. God doesn't pick his chosen ones from a life of ease. He chooses them through trials. Yeah, I know, that's not what we want to hear. We'd rather God call us when everything's smooth, right? But the Bible says something different in Job 23:10. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Trials aren't a mistake, they're part of the process. Think about Job for a minute. This guy had it all, family, wealth, a good name. Then, boom, it's gone. He loses everything, kids, crops, health. sitting there in ashes, scraping sores with a piece of broken pottery. Sounds like a nightmare, right? But God chose him, not to punish him, but to refine him. Through all that pain, Job's faith gets tested, and he comes out shining. God didn't pick him because life was easy. He picked him because Job could handle the fire. Now let's jump to the chosen. Peter again. He's becoming our guy, huh? Remember that scene where he steps out on the water? He's willing, like we talked about. But then the waves hit, the wind's howling, he's freaking out, and he starts sinking. That's a trial, right there. Jesus could have made it calm first, but he didn't. He let Peter face the storm, because that's where the real choice happens. Peter's weakness meets the test, and Jesus pulls him up, proving it's not about avoiding the hard stuff, it's about who you become in it. Here's where it hits us. Ever feel like life's throwing everything at you? Like you're stuck in a storm you didn't sign up for? I've been there. Days where it's one thing after another and I'm thinking, God, what's the deal? Did I do something wrong? Maybe you've lost something big, a job, a loved one, a chance, or you're just tired of fighting battles nobody else sees. But what if that's not a sign you're forgotten? What if it's a sign you're chosen? The world tells us comfort's the goal. Chill out, take it easy, avoid the mess. But God's got a different plan. He's like a blacksmith, putting us in the heat to shape us. Those trials, the late nights, the tears, the doubts, they're not breaking you. They're making you. Job came out as gold. Peter learned to trust. And you? You're in the fire for a reason. Let me get real with you. I've had seasons where I felt crushed, where I wondered if God even saw me. You know that feeling, right? When you're praying and it's just silence. But looking back, those were the times I grew the most. The times I had to lean in, dig deep, and trust anyway. Maybe you're there now, barely holding on, wondering why it's so hard. But what if that's God saying, I see you, and I've got you? Think about it. The chosen ones aren't the ones lounging on the beach. They're the ones in the trenches. Moses faced Pharaoh. David faced Goliath. Mary Magdalene faced demons. Their trials didn't disqualify them. They defined them. And here's the kicker. God's not testing you to watch you fail. He's testing you to show you what you're made of. So what's your trial right now? Is it a struggle you can't shake? A fear that keeps you up at night? Don't run from it. That could be the very thing God's using to mark you as His own. Because when you come through, and you will, it's not just survival. It's proof you're being shaped for something bigger. Now here's the twist. If trials are how He chooses, what's the point of it all? Why put us through the ringer? The next secret's going to tie this together. Because God's not just refining you for kicks. There's a purpose behind it, and it's bigger than you think. Okay, we've been through a lot already. God's after your heart. He picks the weak. He wants your yes, and He shapes you through trials. But here's where it all starts clicking. Secret number 5. God doesn't choose you randomly. He chooses you for a purpose. This isn't some cosmic coin toss. The Bible says it straight up in Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. That's wild, right? Before you even took a breath, God had a plan with your name on it. Let's look at Paul. This guy's a total curveball. He's out there hunting Christians, dragging them to jail, thinking he's doing God a favor. Then bam, blinded on the road to Damascus, Jesus knocks him flat and says, "You're mine." From a persecutor to the guy who spreads the gospel across the world. Random? No way. God chose Paul because He saw a purpose, a mission only Paul could pull off. Every ounce of his stubbornness, his smarts, even his past, got flipped into something huge. Now, over in The Chosen, takes Simon the Zealot. This dude's a fighter, a literal rebel ready to take down Rome. He's got a knife, a cause, and zero chill. But when Jesus calls him, that fire doesn't go to waste. It gets redirected. That scene where he lays down his dagger to follow, it's not chance, it's purpose. God saw a warrior He could use, not for war, but for peace. Here's where it gets personal. Ever wonder why your life looks the way it does? The good, the bad, the messy stuff you can't explain? I've had those nights staring at the ceiling asking, God, what's this all for? Maybe you're there now, piecing together a puzzle that doesn't fit. But what if it's not chaos? What if every step, every stumble, every tear is part of a purpose God's been weaving since day one? The world says life's a roll of the dice. Things just happen, and you deal. But God's saying, no, I've got a script, and you're in it. Think about it. Moses' years in the desert? Prep for leading Israel? Job's trials? A testimony that echoes thousands of years later. Your story's no different. That weakness we talked about, those trials you're facing, they're not accidents. They're training. Let me hit you with this. I've had moments where I felt lost, like nothing made sense. You know that feeling, right? When you're wondering if you're even on the right path. But looking back, I see it. Those lows, those fights, they were building something. Maybe you've got scars too, times you fell hard, dreams that crashed. But what if God's been holding those pieces saying, this is why I chose you? Take Peter again. He's weak, he's willing, he's tested. But why? Because God had a purpose, to make him the rock of the church. That moment in The Chosen when Jesus looks at him and says, on this rock I'll build my church. It's not random. Every doubt, every wave Peter faced led to that. Your life's the same. Every bit's got a point. So here's the question. What's your purpose? You don't have to know it all yet. God's not asking you to. But can you believe it's there? That the late nights, the prayers, the battles, they're not for nothing. You're not a mistake. You're not a maybe. You're chosen, handpicked, for something only you can do. Now here's where it gets bigger. If God's got a purpose for you, what's he aiming at? Is it just about you surviving, or is there more? The next secret's going to blow the lid off this, because God's not just shaping you for yourself. He's got a world out there waiting. So we just hit something big. God's got a purpose for you, not a random throw of the dice. Every trial, every yes, every piece of your story, it's all leading somewhere. But here's where it levels up. Secret number 6. God doesn't just choose you for your own sake. He chooses you to change the world. Yeah, I said it. The world. Sounds insane, right? But check this out. Jesus says in Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. Not you might be or you could be, you are. God's picking you to shine, to shift things, to make waves. Let's go back to the disciples. 12 regular guys, fishermen, nobodies, not a single VIP in the bunch, but Jesus calls them, and what happens? They flip history upside down. From a tiny room in Jerusalem, they spark a movement that's still going today. That's not an accident. It's God choosing small people for a massive purpose. One yes from them, and the world's never the same. Now in The Chosen, look at Nicodemus. He's a Pharisee, a big deal, but he's scared, hiding in the shadows, sneaking to Jesus at night. He's got questions, doubts, no clue what's coming. But that moment when he's wrestling with truth, God's choosing him to see something bigger. He doesn't change the world right then, but his story, his struggle, plants a seed. That's how it works. God picks you, and your light spreads. Here's where it gets real. You ever feel small, like your life's too little to matter? I've been there, thinking, what can I do? I'm just one person. Maybe you're grinding through a regular day, work, bills, kids, and you're like, how's this changing anything? But what if God's not asking you to see the whole picture yet? What if he's saying, just shine where you are, and I'll take it from there? The world's a mess. We all see it. Chaos, hurt, people lost in the dark. But God's not throwing his hands up. He's picking you, yes, you, to be the spark. Think about it. The disciples didn't have TikTok or a megaphone. They had a message and a heart. And it was enough. Your voice, your choices, your willingness, they ripple out farther than you know. Let me get honest. I've had days where I felt pointless, like nothing I did counted. You felt that too, right? When you're wondering if anyone even notices? But then I think about people like Peter, stumbling, loudmouth Peter, who didn't see the big plan either. Yet Jesus says, "You're my rock." One guy's messy life, and it holds up a whole church. Your life's no different. That argument you forgave, that hand you held, that prayer you whispered, it's changing something. So, what's your light? Maybe it's kindness in a hard place. Maybe it's standing up when nobody else will. Maybe it's just showing up day after day when you'd rather quit. God's not asking you to save the planet solo. He's asking you to start. He chose David's sling to take down Goliath. He chose Moses' staff to split the sea. He chose you, cracks and all, to light up the dark. Here's the thing, you don't have to feel big to be big. The disciples didn't. Nicodemus didn't. You don't. God's got the power. He just needs your yes to flip it on. One step, one moment, and who knows how far it'll go. You're not here to just get by. You're here to shake things up. Now we've got one more piece to this puzzle. If God's choosing you to change the world, why you? What's the heartbeat behind it all? Let's wrap this up with something that'll tie it together and maybe even bring you to tears. All right, we've walked through some wild truths. God sees your heart, lifts up the weak, calls for your yes, refines you in fire, hands you a purpose, and sets you loose to light up the world. But here's the final piece, the one that makes it all make sense. Secret number 7. God doesn't choose you because you've got it all figured out. He chooses you because He loves you, plain and simple. No scorecard, no tryouts, just love. The Bible nails it in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son. It's not about what you do, it's about who you are to Him. Think about the woman at the well. She's a walking disaster. 5 husbands, shunned by her town, carrying shame like a backpack. She's got 0 points on the good enough scale. But Jesus sits down, talks to her, offers her living water. Why? Not because she's earned it. She hasn't. He chooses her because He loves her, right in her mess. And that love? It sends her running to tell everyone about Him. Now in The Chosen, you see it everywhere. Peter, Matthew, Mary, Nicodemus, they're all over the map. Peter bails on Jesus, Matthew's a sellout, Mary's a wreck, Nicodemus is too scared to step up, but Jesus keeps calling them. That moment when He looks at Matthew knowing his past, or when He pulls Peter close after the denials, it's not about their track record, it's about love. He sees them and says, "You're mine anyway." Here's where it cuts deep. Ever feel like you've got to earn God's attention? Like you're not holy enough, not fixed enough? I've been there, thinking, I've screwed up too much, God's over it. Maybe you've got baggage, secrets, regrets, stuff you can't shake. Or maybe you're just worn out, feeling like you'll never be enough. But what if God's not tallying your wins? What if He's looking at you right now saying, "I love you, period"? The world's all about merit, grind, prove it, show your worth. But God's not playing that game. He's not handing out medals, He's throwing open His arms. Peter denies Him 3 times and Jesus still makes him breakfast. That's not a merit badge, that's love. Let me get real. I've had days where I felt like trash, where I thought, God's done with me. You've been there too, right? When you're drowning in your own mistakes, wondering if you're too far gone, but then I see that woman at the well, or Jesus with Peter, and it clicks. He doesn't choose me because I'm awesome. He chooses me because He's awesome. His love doesn't give up, even when I do. So what about you? What's dragging you down? That thing you're ashamed of? That doubt you can't kill? God's not waiting for you to scrub it clean. He's already picked you, smack in the middle of your chaos. Those trials we talked about? Not punishment. Proof He's sticking with you, that purpose. It's His love saying, "I've got dreams for you." Here's the deal. You're not chosen because you're spotless. You're chosen because you're His. David's messes didn't stop God's love. Paul's old life didn't either. Your story's the same. That scene in The Chosen when Jesus says Mary's name, that's you. He knows your name, your junk, your everything. And he loves you anyway. Junk, your everything. And he loves you anyway. So breathe it in. You don't have to earn this. You don't have to run yourself ragged to matter. God's love is why you're here, why you're weak, why you're still fighting. It's the thread that weaves all these secrets into one big, beautiful truth. And it's yours, right now, no catch. God's all about your heart. Picks the weak, loves your yes, refines you in fire, gives you a purpose, uses you to shift the world, and does it all out of love. You'd think that's the whole picture, right? But hold on, there's more. Secret number 8. God chooses you to grow through surrender. Not control, not hustle, surrender. It's a curveball, I know. The Bible hints at it in Matthew 16:25. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. Sounds upside down, doesn't it? But that's how God rolls. Take Abraham. God calls him out of nowhere. Leave your home, your family, everything you know. He's old, comfy, set in his ways, but God says, go. And Abraham surrenders. No map, no backup plan, just a yes. Then comes the big one. God asks for Isaac, his only son. Abraham's ready to give him up, trusting God's got something bigger. That's surrender. It's not weakness, it's growth. God turns him into the father of nations.
Now, in The Chosen, look at Andrew, Peter's quieter brother. He's not the loud one, not the star. But when John the Baptist points to Jesus, Andrew drops everything, his nets, his life, to follow. That scene where he's just there, steady, letting go of his old ways. It's surrender. He doesn't fight for the spotlight, he gives it up, and God grows him into a quiet pillar of the crew. Here's where it lands with us. Ever cling to something too tight? A plan, a dream, a way you think life should go? I've done it, gripping my own ideas so hard my knuckles turn white. Maybe you're there, holding on to control because letting go feels like falling. But what if that's where God's waiting? What if he's choosing you to grow, not by winning, but by releasing? The world's all about grabbing, more power, more stuff, more say. But God's whispering, let it go. Not to leave you empty, but to fill you up. Abraham surrendered his home and got a legacy. Andrew surrendered his nets and got a mission. When you let go, God doesn't drop you, he lifts you. Let me get real. I've fought surrender, thinking if I just try harder, I'll fix it all. You've been there too, right? Clinging to a job, a fight, a fear, thinking, I've got this? But every time I've let go, prayed, God, take it, something shifts. Peace creeps in, growth happens. Maybe you've felt it, those moments where you stop wrestling and start trusting. That's God choosing you to stretch, to bloom. So what are you holding? A grudge, a plan that's not working, a need to be right. Surrender's scary, I get it. It's like stepping off a cliff hoping there's a net, but God's net is there. Peter had to surrender his pride after sinking. Matthew surrendered his old life. You're no different. God's choosing you to grow, not by clutching tighter, but by opening your hands. Here's the kicker. Surrender isn't losing, it's finding. You let go of the small stuff, and God hands you the big stuff. Peace, strength, a new you. We've got one more secret to tie this all up, and it's going to show you why this journey's worth every step. Secret number 9. God chooses you to reflect his glory, not your own shine, his. It's like he's holding up a mirror saying, look at me through you. The Bible says it in 2 Corinthians 3:18, and we all, with unveiled faces, reflect the Lord's glory, being transformed into his image. That's the end game, his light bouncing off your life. Take Moses again. After all that surrendering we talked about, leading Israel facing Pharaoh, he goes up Mount Sinai. When he comes down, his face is glowing, literally shining with God's glory. He didn't do anything fancy.
He just stood in God's presence. The people couldn't even look at him. It was that bright. God chose him not to flex Moses' greatness, but to show off his own. Now in The Chosen, think about Mary Magdalene after Jesus frees her. She's not preaching sermons or leading armies, but there's this quiet glow, those moments where she's just there, serving, smiling, alive. That scene where she's washing dishes or looking at Jesus with those grateful eyes. It's not about her, it's about him shining through her. God picks her to reflect what he can do with a broken life turned whole. Here's where it lands with us. Ever feel like your story's too small to matter? Like you're just muddling through, not making a dent? I've been there, thinking, what's so special about me? Maybe you're not on a stage or changing millions of lives. But what if that's not the point? What if God's choosing you to show himself, right where you are? The world's obsessed with personal glory. Build your brand, chase the spotlight, but God's got a different vibe. He's saying, I don't need your fame, I need your face. Not to make you a star, but to let his light bounce off you. Moses didn't glow because he was perfect. He glowed because he met God. Mary didn't shine because she was loud. She shone because she was his. Let me get honest. I've had days where I felt invisible, like nobody sees me, like I'm not enough. You've felt that too, right? When you're wondering if your life even counts. But then I think about Moses' face, or Mary's quiet strength, and it hits me. God's not asking me to be the sun. He's asking me to be the moon, reflecting his light, not making my own. So what's your reflection look like? You don't have to be perfect. God knows you're not. Maybe it's the way you forgive when it's hard. Maybe it's how you keep going when you want to quit. Maybe it's that smile you give when nobody's looking. That's his glory, little sparks of him in you. Look at Peter one more time. He's a mess, denying Jesus, sinking in waves, but by the end of The Chosen, he's preaching with fire. Not his fire, God's. Every stumble, every trial, every surrender we've talked about, it's all polishing him to reflect something bigger. Your story's the same. That weakness? It's a crack for his light. That love? It's the fuel. Here's the thing, you're not chosen to be the hero, you're chosen to point to him. The world might not see it, but God does. Every time you say yes, every time you stand back up, every time you let go, he's shining through. You're a walking billboard of his grace, his power, his love, so take a second. You don't have to be loud or big or flawless. God's choosing you to reflect him, right in your everyday, messy, beautiful life. That's why you're here. That's why all these secrets matter. And as we close this out, we'll see how to live it, starting today. Let's take a breath and look at what we've uncovered. God's after your heart, not your highlight reel. He picks the weak to flex his strength. He's waiting for your yes, not your skills. He shapes you through trials, not comfort. He's got a purpose with your name on it. He uses you to change the world, loves you without a scorecard, grows you when you surrender, and chooses you to reflect his glory. That's a lot, right? But here's the thing. It's not just a list. It's a lifeline. You're not here by accident. If you've stuck with me this long, I'm betting you've felt it. That whisper, that pull, that sense you're meant for more. Maybe you've seen yourself in Peter's stumbles, Mary's mess, or Moses' doubts. Maybe you've nodded along thinking, yeah, that's me, the weak one, the tired one, the one who doesn't get it right. But that's the beauty of it. God's not choosing you despite those things. He's choosing you because of them. So what now? You've got these secrets, 9 truths that flip the script on everything the world's been telling you. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you, the real you, cracks and all. Because that's who God's chasing. That's who he's calling. That's who he's shining through. Here's my challenge. Live it. Step into today like you're chosen, because you are. Say yes to that nudge you've been ignoring. Let go of that thing you're clutching too tight. Look for his glory in your mess. You don't need a big stage or a loud voice, just a willing heart. One step, one moment, and you're reflecting Him, changing your corner of the world without even knowing it. Let me leave you with this. You're not alone in this. I've felt the weight too, the doubts, the fears, the why me's. But every time I lean into these truths, I find something: peace, purpose, a love that doesn't quit. You can too. So what do you say? Will you walk out of this video as a chosen one? Not perfect, not polished, but picked by God Himself? Before you go, let's make it real. Drop a comment below, just 3 words. I am chosen. Say it, believe it, live it. Hit that like button if this hit home, and subscribe if you want more of this journey. Because this isn't the end, it's your beginning. Thanks for being here. Now go shine.